Hello and welcome to my podcast Media and Ideology, Ideology According to Zizek, Part 3, Individualism and Entrepreneurialism. Both capitalist and techno-feudal entrepreneurs adhere to the ideology of entrepreneurial individualism. The state, at least in theory, is not supposed to interfere in the individual's creative work, nor intervene in the day-to-day workings of the global capitalism as such. To go back to the idea of neoliberalism, one of the chief proponents of liberalism in economy, and in a way a proto-neoliberal, Milton Friedman, wrote that economic liberalism emphasized freedom as the ultimate goal and the individual as the ultimate entity in the society. And that freedom of the individual, or perhaps the family, as Milton Friedman writes, is the ultimate goal in judging social arrangements. The ideological framework of individualism is obvious already here, since in this manifesto, so-called, of capitalist individualism, family is mentioned. One can assume as a support for the individual when it gets in financial trouble and needs a bailout. So this seemingly endlessly free individual does in fact need support, but it is crucial that the family offers that support rather than the state. This means that rather than being focused on the individual entrepreneur, neoliberal ideology in reality relies on the triad of individual, family, and state, the individual being its ideological focus, the sublime object. As it was obvious during the financial crisis of 2008, the state had to intervene and save the banks, as it has been doing repeatedly ever since, which happened perhaps most egregiously in the US, where the government is traditionally considered to be an intruder in the private individualistic lifestyle. Contrary to that, it is a fact that neoliberalism truly cannot function without the state. Varoufakis notes that if you take an iPhone apart, every single technology in it was developed by some government grant, every single one. Some economists also point out the crucial role of the entrepreneurial state, which actually takes financial risks and creates conditions in which capitalists can thrive. Still, the ideology to which many subscribe to and consider the capitalist individualism as something which is the highest good in our societies persists. It is for that reason that Democrats in the US, Labour in the UK, and social democracy in Europe were needed to truly implement what conservative had started. The so-called New Democrats in the 90s, for instance, and their followers, played the role of the good capitalists. They were ready to transcend what was considered traditional center-left politics and do, as it were, crazy stuff, rearranging the pieces of neoliberal capitalism as an assemblage of the strong state, financial capital, culturally progressive ideas, and individualistic lifestyle. The combination of liberal economic theories and liberalism on the center-left, the progressive society focused on sex, gender, the self, the liberation of the repressed individual, turned into mere corporate entrepreneurial individualism. Certainly on the individual level, we do enjoy more freedom to do what we want than ever, at least in the West. While on the societal level the things are getting more sinister by the day. Surveillance by the state and capital, exploitation, overconsumption, and confusion regarding the environmental problems and how to solve them. The limits of the freedom of the press, the new radical right-wing parties, and erosion of democracy, as well as the failure of the left, the real left, to counter it, as well as new wars and global conflicts. So what is the difference between the concept of entrepreneurship and individualism now and before the quote-unquote neoliberal era? The difference seems to be the all-pervasive idea that potentially everyone should and could be or already is an entrepreneur, only they do not know it yet. And that there is no such thing as quote-unquote workers or the so-called working class anymore. We are all supposed to be or become freewheeling creative geniuses who only rely on themselves and are ready to risk everything, since it is the sole path to not only success, but even to what is supposed to be the so-called normal everyday life. This can be understood as a perverted realization of the famous German performance artist Joseph Beuys' dictum that, quote, Every human being is an artist. Today, we are all creative geniuses called upon as subjects of today's ideology to recognize our true entrepreneurial potential or perish by our own fault if we fail to do so. In other words, we are all artists, but struggling artists, struggling every day to survive. During the COVID crisis, tech companies got yet another major boost. Zoom video conferencing, food delivery services, online supermarkets, new payment services exploded onto the scene. On the one hand, it seemed that for a moment at the very beginning of the COVID crisis and during the first lockdowns, everything stopped, even capitalism itself. The quote-unquote strong state had its 5 minutes. On the other hand, as the crisis developed further, the liberal governments came under attack for becoming too authoritarian, losing their already dwindling approval. Capitalism in the end prospered even more and the rise of techno-feudalism accelerated further. This had a profound effect on the media. Working as an independent journalist, commentator, podcaster on YouTube and other platforms has become a serious alternative to mainstream or the so-called legacy media, which in turn has gained a powerful competitor. The audiences in near future will presumably rely even less on mainstream media, Hollywood, or serious and well-researched documentaries. They can simply have it straight from the horse's mouth, as it were, on YouTube or whatever new platform should arise in the future. The problem here is obvious. This development of social media, besides having some positive sides to it, only adds to the already enormous power of techno-feudalism. Ideologies and their agents are very good at recognizing a certain problem. This is crucial for understanding politics, ideology, and their functioning. The Nazis recognized the desperation of the people in Germany during the Great Depression in the 1930s caused by capitalism. Organized religions like Christianity also recognized the need for people to believe in something. Totalitarian systems recognize people's need to be quote-unquote controlled in the sense of relieving them of many difficult decisions that need to be made in a society. Same with neoliberal ideology. It recognizes our desire for individual expression, for living our own individualized lives. All of these ideologies point to a certain truth, so the problem is in their approach. An ideology most obviously does not want to resolve anything, rather on the contrary, it is there to perpetuate problems, especially those which create the need for such an ideology to exist in the first place. One of the most egregious examples is humanitarianism. Giving charity to the poor perpetuates their predicament further. The poor have to stay poor in order for the wealthy to give charity, clean their conscience, and continue with exploitation in order to create more wealth. This is what Zizek would call pure ideology, a mechanism set in place and once established becomes almost impossible to change, since the argument can always be made that we are always in some kind of an ideology anyway, and that we simply want to replace one thing with another, presumably a worse one. The latter is, in my view, precisely not the point Zizek wants to make, although his definition of ideology seems all-encompassing. Firstly, the trap that needs to be avoided is the thinking that we can avoid ideology, or that we are in fact not in ideology, similarly to political pundits and podcasters who claim that they are neutral or objective, being neither left nor right, only following reason and logic, until it turns out they are in fact hardcore right-wingers or Trump apologists. There is perhaps nothing more dangerous than thinking that one is outside of ideology already. But on the obverse of that, to claim that we cannot escape ideology at all is also fatal and borders on nihilism. The right way to go would be then to at least recognize the gap within the ideological edifice itself, which allows for questioning, critique, and therefore its suspension. The loss of any kind of outside support that we might feel at that moment is perhaps the death of Lacan's big other, as absolute guarantee of meaning, be it God, science, society, etc. And finally, the realization that the big other, as Lacan claims, does not exist. When we manage to confront an ideology, we slip out of our world for a moment, as it were, and encounter a fissure and stare into the void of meaning, which in a way reflects our own subjectivity. In the next video, I'm going to talk about critique of ideology. How do we criticize ideology, and is there any way of escaping ideology? Thank you for listening, and please don't forget to like and subscribe.